Good morning, good afternoon, everyone from where you are. I can see so many people tuning in. We have Ethiopia in the house, we have Malawi. Please type in the chat box where you're representing from, which AfriYAN network you're coming from. I can see only Jackie interacting. We have friends from Malawi, I'm from Kenya, Zimbabwe in the house. So welcome everyone, and welcome to today's masterclass dubbed Period Power Crafting Stories for MHM Change. I am so delighted to see many of you joining us from across the region. Of course, you know the Youth Power Hub is a partnership between YACT, AfriYAN ESA, UNFPA ESARO, and UNESCO joining us this year. And together we've been creating spaces where young people can gain practical skills, connect, and lead advocacy on issues surrounding us in Africa as young people, for us and by us. And today's focus is on menstrual health, not only as a health issue, but also as a human rights issue for gender equality and also for policy concern. In this session, we are exploring behavioral change communication, which is a new concept that you guys had mentioned. Remember, we had done surveys before, we have interacted with you before, and you have explained to us how you want to gain new communication skills to learn how to advocate better as policy makers, as youth experts in your countries. And by the end of this session, we hope that you will walk away with knowing how to use personal stories for advocacy, for applying behavioral change communication, and also having the confidence to just tell your story by yourselves and having a voice for the voiceless. And before we begin, just a quick note, we do know that menstruation is a sensitive topic, so this is a brave and safe space. Cameras can be on and off if you wish, and if you want to participate in whatever way feels comfortable, we have the unmute button. You can raise your hand if you need to speak. We have the chat box. We have the Q&A if you want to engage our facilitator. And also, if you feel that this session feels quite heavy for you, you do have our permission to perfectly step away if you need to. And just before I introduce our well-able facilitator, we do want to give a few house rules. Number one is that Please use the chat box and mute yourself if you need to, but also respect that people might also touch the unmute button when you don't need to. Please ensure that you're also not in a noisy background. Don't interrupt the session for everyone else. And also note that this is a safe space, as we have consistently said, that you're enabled to step away if you need to. And just to read a brief intro about our facilitator is that Qali Eid is a Nairobi-based storyteller, communication strategist, and host of the ABCs of SBC, which is a UNICEF-supported podcast that explores social and behavioral change across the global South. With over a decade of experience in global storytelling and advocacy, she has worked with organizations such as World Bank, World Vision, and Brands on a Mission. Her specialty is helping movements and institutions humanize data, connect across differences, and tell powerful stories that shift culture and inspire action. And she is deeply passionate about equity and dignity, and believes that storytelling is one of the most transformative tools of social change, especially in advancing equity, gender, and health. So please help me in welcoming Qali. Use the celebratory emojis, use anything, but just please help me in welcoming Qali, who is our facilitator for today. So over to you, Qali, and welcome to the Youth Power Hub Masterclass.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm loving all of the emojis. I'm loving seeing everybody from all across the continent. So thank you, Sharon. And yes, everyone, welcome to this masterclass, Period Power, Crafting Stories for Menstrual Hygiene Management Change, as Sharon had just introduced me. I'll just like to say that I believe in platforming and centering youth voices and local leadership. And it's imperative that in the moment that we find ourselves in history, that as young people, we can come together and effect change wherever we find ourselves on the continent. So that's why I'm very honored to be here with you all today. I heard that there's about 21 countries represented in the Youth Hub. And so, yeah, we're going to explore how we can use storytelling to drive change in menstrual health and break period stigma in our communities. So let me share my screen so we can actually get this started. Can everybody see the presentation? Any
Yes, we
thumbs
can.
up? Perfect, perfect. Thank you. So yes, welcome to this masterclass. As Sharon had said, this is a safe space. It's a brave space. I know that menstruation can be a sensitive topic. It's deeply personal, emotional, and can sometimes be heavy. And so you're invited to participate, whether in the chat box, there's going to be parts of this class where we can unmute and, speak to one another. Whether you want to have your cameras on or off is a personal choice. And if you ever need to step away from for a moment, that's absolutely fine as well. There's no judgment here, just all support and good energy. And I would like to remind us, if you could please keep yourselves on mute. I hear some background noise right now. That would be really, really helpful if you could mute yourselves. So, thank you. So the objectives for today, by the end of the session, I would love for us to be able to understand how storytelling can be a powerful tool for advocacy. I also want us to learn some key behavior change communication principles, as well as storytelling frameworks, and how they apply to menstrual health management. And then finally, I would love to explore how we can share our stories in impactful ways. So these objectives, of course, align with broader ICPD 30 commitments and are part of the ongoing mission to center youth voices in global policy and advocacy. And most importantly, today is about both self-expression and skills building. It is a working session. We're going to have a part in the middle where I'm going to ask all of you to write a bit of a story. And I want you all to leave with something that you've created today. Now, Why does this work matter? We always have these big, lofty goals that are made across the world, many policy commitments. But this in particular, let's zoom out for a moment. Menstrual health is not just about hygiene. It's not just simply a health issue. It intersects with education, human rights, gender equality, mental health, poverty. It is a policy issue as well. And across the world, there are over 500 million people that lack access to menstrual products and safe sanitation. And this type of period poverty is mainly driven by stigma, the high cost of menstrual products, and a lack of water and sanitation facilities around the world. And so, what does this look like in practice? Sometimes young people have to skip school. It forces a lot of people to be silenced, to hide their experiences entirely. Now, the ICPD 30 is the International Conference on Population and Development. It first happened in 1994, and they had a 30-year vision. The focus areas around sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender equality, youth engagement, and why does this matter to menstrual health management? Menstrual health is seen as essentially a bodily autonomy issue, a gender equity issue, and very pivotal to SRHR. So when we talk about periods, it's about power, it's about opportunity, and it's about dignity. And menstrual health is also directly tied to Sustainable Development Goals 3, which is about adolescent, and in particular, adolescent health within it. And today, I want us to think about how storytelling can help us move closer to these commitments. Now, I have a bit of a Mentimeter that I want us all to engage in for a second. So if you could please use the QR code, I'm just going to stop the sharing and go to another screen. 1 second. I find that I'm getting more and more technologically disadvantaged the older I get. But let me just find that screen for us. Where are we? So if you could all scan the QR code and just write in what's one word that comes to mind when you hear period or menstruation. Please let me know if the QR code was not working. If you want me to share, I'll put the link in the chat box. This is the link that you can all. Okay, so I see somebody has written natural in the chat. Somebody else has written bleeding. I've also shared the link. I'll give us about a minute to see people put in. Are we able to see the link in the chat box? Ah, and the code. Thank you, thank you. Let me find the code. Give me a second. That's the code. Thank you. Okay, wow. So we've got cramps, bleeding, body, burden, clean, disorder, embarrassing, natural, sanitary pads, red, uncomfortable. There's a lot of emotions that go with what comes to mind when we're speaking about periods. So thank you so much for contributing and telling me about what comes to mind. Now, I want us to think about why storytelling matters. Why are we having this conversation? Now, there's really three main things that matters for this class, and then there's one that's sort of like overall. Storytelling has been one of the oldest tools that we have as human beings to communicate with one another, and how culture and history has been passed down for thousands of years. In the case of advocacy, in the case of the work that we do to create some level of social change, stories humanize complex issues. They make them more relatable. So oftentimes when we are in rooms where we're talking about policies, we're talking about laws, we're talking about judicial systems, maybe, for the everyday person, sometimes that can feel very far-fetched. But when we have a story that can connect to people's emotions, that can humanize an issue. Secondly, stories move people to feel through humanization, and this can then lead to action. The other thing is that when we share our lived experiences, we challenge shame, stigma, silence, and that's incredibly important when you're doing this sort of work. We want to be able to have uncomfortable conversations to get to the other side of change. And then the last thing is that stories can inspire. I just mentioned that we can feel. I wonder, for some of you, as we continue this class, I want you to think about moments where there might have been something that you read, something that someone said, maybe a song that you heard, a movie that you watched, whatever it may be, that left an imprint on you or stayed in your mind because the issues at hand were so powerful and the way that the information was relayed affected you in a way that maybe it wouldn't if it was just like a simple conversation with someone that you knew. I want us to be able to keep that in mind because when we're speaking to policymakers, when we're speaking to community leaders, when we're even speaking to our friends and family, stories make the big issues feel very real and very close to home. Now, this is an example of the way that people might be able to use storytelling. Now, Zana Africa is an organization based in Kenya, and they created something called Nia Teen. It's a comic sort of magazine, and they address issues like menstrual and reproductive health education, self-efficacy building, confidence building. They challenge gender norms and they foster essential life skills all through these messages that they've put into their storytelling. And they've changed how a lot of young girls see themselves and how they deal with the issues that they face in their day-to-day life. So this is one of the examples of the way that you can use storytelling for advocacy. Now, this is a screenshot that I took from the first comic that they put out. And the reason that I absolutely love this is because when we speak about menstruation, it is a biological, very natural process. And there's a lot of different steps involved that makes the cycle work. And a lot of them can be very complicated and rooted in science. Now, when you have a sort of image like this that highlights the cycle that girls and women will go through, and you follow that up with a comic and basically just a conversation of people asking questions of what are periods and how will I know my period is about to start and what if my period doesn't come? And there's this individual that's answering these questions in a relatable way, in a way that is easily understandable and can also follow the actual steps of the menstrual cycle, what that does is, one, it raises awareness for people that didn't have the information, and also two, it educates girls on their own bodies. And I think that this is a brilliant way of being able to bring together storytelling and science, education, biology. And I'll also make sure that I share these links with Sharon and the Youth Hub team so that when there's a follow-up email that is sent to all of you, you'll be able to find these resources and things that I'm going to be mentioning. Now, what is behavior change communication? Behavior is quite complex, and it is really influenced by factors at four different levels. The first one is the individual level. So this is really focusing inward. What are the beliefs that we hold as people? What are the things that we feel about ourselves? What are our perceptions on the things that are happening around us? The second one is family and peer networks. So our immediate circles of influence, they influence behavior. Then there's our greater community, and then there's like society and those bigger structures. And behavior change communication is an evidence and research-based process of using communication to promote behavior that lead to improvements in knowledge, attitude, practices, and lifestyles. And we use BCC, and also sometimes today you'll find it called SBCC, so social and behavior change communication, and those can be used interchangeably. And we use this sort of strategy in health, in gender equity, in climate, across the board. It's not just a health only type of communication strategy. And it can actually lead to some real shifts in behavior. And so at the very foundation, it's about understanding the factors that shape our behavior, what we know, believe, and do, and sort of getting people to understand other ways of thinking and sharing information in ways that are not imposing, but in ways that can actually start creating ripple effects of change. So, for example, with menstrual health management, behavior change communication can help shift maybe taboos about periods. It can help shift school absent rates for young girls. And it can also maybe shift policy prioritizations in the communities that we live in. Now, let me just, I think that I saw some chats. Yes, thank you. Sharon has actually shared the link of the magazine in the chat. Thank you, Sharon. Now, if we think about what I've just spoken about, there are really three core elements to understanding what behavior is. The first one is knowledge. So, what do people know? Like what is it that we think about all of these sorts of ideas, whether it be menstruation, whether it's, diabetes, whatever the topic at hand, what is it that people know, right? The second one is attitudes. How do people feel about it? In the case of menstruation, for example, people might feel that it's embarrassing. There are some communities around the world that feel like it's dirty. There are communities where girls are actually, they can't stay in the family home when they're menstruating. They have to be outside of the home. So this is what we mean about attitudes. How do people feel about these things and what do they believe? And then the third one is practice. What are people doing or not doing? Young people are skipping school. People are not speaking about it. Like I said, some people have to stay outside of the family home. So once we can understand and pinpoint these three elements of behavior, then it makes the next step a lot easier, which is how do we actually build behavior change communication? And this takes really 4 points of consideration. The first one always, and by the way, let me also make a note. Sometimes I have been known to speak a little fast. So if you do feel that I'm speaking a bit fast, please put it into the chat. And if I don't see it, Sharon, just interrupt me. But the first sort of key ingredient for behavior change communication is knowing your audience. Who do you want to speak to when you're creating this type of communication, when you are building a story? Is it that you want to speak to classmates? Is it your family? Is it community or religious leaders? Is it policymakers? Is it other advocates like you in this Youth Power Hub? Who is your audience? The second one is the barrier. What belief or taboo are you challenging? Where do you want to see change happen? And so, for example, a very common one is that periods are dirty. For some people, it may be that periods stop girls from playing sports. Girls shouldn't play sports when they're on their periods. Maybe that's something that you want to tackle. So, who do you want to speak to, and what belief do they have that you want to tackle? The third one is the trigger. What do you want them to think or feel or to do differently? Because storytelling is about evoking that emotion or helping people think about things. So, what do you want to trigger in your audience? Maybe it's that you want people to donate pads. Maybe it's that simply you just want to start a conversation with a family member. It could be many, many things. And the next one is the channel. Where and how will your message be shared? Know that we're living in a very hyper-connected time. So you think about social media, but sometimes it's through a theater play. Sometimes it's a storytelling circle. For people that are still in school, maybe it's a school assembly. Some people are artists and are very good at drawing and painting. Maybe it looks like a mural. So these are really the four key ingredients that form behavior change communication. So I want us to take just like a few seconds, and I want us to think about a time when your mind was changed, or you took action, or a story that left a mark on you. And I want you to think about three things. What made it powerful? Who told you the story, or where did you see it? And what was it about this in particular story or moment or thing that you watched that stayed with you? I want you to just maybe think to yourself about it. If you want to share in the chat, please go ahead. But I'll just give us a few seconds to think about that. I will tell you that one thing that has always stayed with me is the Michael Jackson song, They Don't Care About Us. That's something for as long as I can remember. That has always been a song at the back of my mind. And maybe that also shows my age, but that is a piece of advocacy in itself. So now that you've all sort of reflected a bit about a story that was powerful to you, I want us to think about how you can tell such stories. Okay, so throughout storytelling, whether you are dealing with a simple story of, you know, you're telling your friend something that happened, or it is a piece of media on TV, or it's an article that you're reading, or it's even a poem, or, a proverb in your culture. There are certain storytelling structures that exist in all of our different communities. And I'm not going to dive into all of them because some of them are very complex, but there are two that I have found work really well for advocacy purposes. The first one is the HEAR framework. HEAR stands for hook, emotion, action, reflection. And we use this format for sharing personal turning points or reframing a taboo experience with a certain level of emotion and clarity. So the hook is usually, yes, I see people in the comments saying kindly share the presentation. And I'm sure Sharon and the team will work on that after the presentation. But so the HEAR framework is hook, emotion, action, reflection. The hook is really a strong start, you know, a surprising fact, a surprising moment or image, something to engage people and like hook them in. Emotion is, what did you feel? You know, like this incredible thing just happened. What do you feel in that moment? Action is, then what happened next? You went through this thing or you witnessed something. You felt very deeply about it. Okay, so what happened next? What did you do? What did someone else do? And then there's reflection. What is the insight or message that you want to leave us with? What is the point of telling this story? What do you want us to take away from this? So, if I'm to quickly say a story that follows this framework, the first time I got my period was during school assembly. I was wearing a white uniform. I was terrified. I thought everyone could see it. No one had ever talked to me about periods. I ran to the bathroom and cried. A classmate gave me her sweater and said, "It's normal. You're not alone." That one act changed everything. If we spoke about periods more openly, maybe no girl would have to feel that shame again. I spoke about the very sort of like scary feeling, and girls and women will know this feeling when you might be wearing something white or any other color really, and you think that you've started your period. It hits you. You know that feeling, you recognize it. You explain how you felt about that, what emotion it created. Then what happened next? What was that turning point? In this case, a classmate offering a sweater and saying, you know what? It's absolutely normal. Happens to all of us. And then there's the reflection. What was so powerful about that one act? What do you want people to know? You know? In this case, we want people to speak more openly about periods and it not be this thing that we have to hide or be ashamed of when it happens, because it's a very normal biological process. So that's the first one. That's the HERE framework. It's very emotional. It comes from like personal story. You want to make people feel something. The second one is a bit shorter. It's the and, but, therefore framework. And we use this when we want to build a short, persuasive argument that shows a problem and a solution. Okay, so it's usually there is X and Y, but here's the problem, and therefore this is what needs to change. Okay, so if I give an example of what this might look like, menstruation is a normal biological process, and girls deserve to attend school without interruption. But many girls in my community miss school every month because they can't afford pads and feel too ashamed to ask for help. Therefore, I started a youth-led pad bank at school and created a WhatsApp group where we share facts and support each other without judgment. So in this sort of structure, it keeps the story really focused and really impactful. And it's more, I think the ABT framework is what I've used more of in advocacy campaigns. You see it a lot being to your face, very strong, and you ask for what you want, or you share what you've done. So after therefore in this case could have also been, therefore we're asking for our government to commit to XYZ. So you can also change the therefore. It doesn't always have to be what you've done. It can also be an ask of the change that you want to see. Okay, so this is the fun bit. I don't know how fun it'll be for everyone, but I hope that it will be. We're gonna have a bit of a story writing workshop. Let me just check what the time is. Okay, we're good on time. I want you all to choose one of the prompts below. I've put these there. They're beginner friendly. If you're someone who has more experience with like storytelling, please feel free to like do your own, prompt, story, all of that. It can be a story, it can be a caption, it can be a reflection, it could even be an idea if you're more of like a visual storyteller or you like sort of like photography or art or, filmmaking, whatever it is, whatever medium you want, spend the next, let's say the next 20 minutes and then I'll check in with you. I want you guys to be honest, be creative, use your voice. And yeah, and then we'll be back in about 20 minutes. I'll leave these prompts up. And yeah, over to you all. And if you have any sort of questions, you can just no, okay, so I actually see some questions. Jacqueline, thank you. So you can write the stories if you have a pen and paper next to you, if you're on your laptop and you want to write in a document, however you want. You don't have to write it in the chat box, but the next stage is that I'm going to ask a couple of people to share theirs. So maybe you can share it there then. But yes, let's use the next 20 minutes to write a bit of a story. And if you have questions, just pop it in the chat.
Ubusha bakubunga
All right. I know it hasn't been exactly 20 minutes, but I see some brave people sharing their stories in the chat. If you're still writing, that's absolutely fine. But I thought that, honestly, I thought that it was going to take a bit of convincing for people to share their stories. And you guys are so ready and so willing and so courageous. And I love it. So I want us to just remember to be kind, to listen, to uplift each other, use all of the reaction and the emojis on the screen in the chat as we have a couple of people that have already shared their stories with us. the first one that I saw, and I wonder if you would want to read them out loud. But the first one that I saw was from, I think it might be Mtobisi Simelani. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Please tell me how to pronounce properly. But you had said that, how about if we already have a story? So if you would like to share, please let me know. You can unmute yourself and share.
Hello, hello
Hi, how are
everyone.
you?
I'm good, and I hope you are all good. Yes, you pronounced it well. It's Mtobisi Simelane from Eswatini.
Okay.
The first time, I will share a little bit because there are currently a lot of stories that I have when it comes to menstruation. Although I'm a guy, I'm able, but what's key, I'm exposed to many young people in Eswatini, especially adolescents and young people, because I do a voluntary work when it comes to support groups and teen clubs around the country. So one day I was in the field, I was having a session, a teen club session in a remote clinic because most of the support group that I serve, they are based in a facility level. So one, two, there were currently two young girls who one had, they were laughing at her, that he plotted her dress. Then uh, I got a little money to buy. I got 50 rands. Then wow, I felt like crying because she came to me. I wasn't even aware that she is on her period. Then he started saying that they are laughing at her. Then when I checked, then I saw that she's already in his period and the dress is already dirty. Then because during the weekends, the sister of the facility or the senior nurse is always there. I requested her that how about we make a fundraising on the money that is paid by every patient that usually come to this clinic because it is in a remote area. Then they are paying something like 10 rands to access any service in the clinic. That then we said they will just we put a box where they are contributing. So now what I'm grateful about all the young girls that are attending support group there, they are given them sanitary pads because I suggested that the box for the donations, the senior nurse will provide sanitary pads to all the young girls that usually attend the support group. And what I'm grateful about in the country, almost all a few facilities are now adapting that box which I invented in that rural area. Then now, with everything that is I came across when it comes to period pains, periods and menstruation, I have ideas and also I had a lot of stories when it comes to oh, periods and menstruation because in most cases, especially in the for vulnerable groups in the rural areas, they don't have the information because there are a lot of myths that are there when it comes to menstruation because the knowledge is not disseminated to them because even they at home there is no enough support when it comes to menstruation literacy as well as periods. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that it's really important to recognize how important it is to also have people around menstruating individuals that can, step in and support them as well. And I've been reading the comments, so many coming in. I love it. I don't think that we'll have time for absolutely everyone. But I would like, I read one from Jafeta Amakali. I would love for you to read this because I think that there's something about sometimes when we're doing advocacy work where we, because these are serious issues, we think that we always have to be very serious as well. But everybody brings their own personality into it. I'm a very sort of like reflective, poetic person when I'm writing. Some people have a very sort of activist tone when they are writing their stories or telling their stories. And then there are people that bring a little bit of humor. And I also want to give an example of what that can sound like because it's not the common type that we see every day when we're seeing campaigns and things of that nature. So, Jafeta, if you could please tell us about this experience that you had, your story, that would be great. Maybe Jafeta is not there. We can't hear you. Maybe you're muted. Okay, if he can't come on, then I'll just read it. Okay. So he writes, the first time I heard about periods was in the shop with my mom and big sister. My sister asked for pads and I got jealous because usually we both get something matching or similar. So I said, Mom, why don't you buy pads for me too? She laughed and said, because you're a boy. I stood there confused, holding a pack of pads, thinking, so boys don't get nice things now. And I found that a little amusing. Um, so thank you all for like sharing your stories. There was a point that someone made in the chat box that I think is really, really important when we're doing this sort of work as well, is that because we're talking about girls and women a lot of the times, the boy child is also sometimes forgotten about in these conversations. But the reason that it's incredible to have also stories from men, from boys, is that this is also something that in some way affects them. But also, if we're going to normalize this, if we're going to shift attitudes, then we also need boys to understand that this is not something shameful. This is not something to be embarrassed about, you know? So in this case with Jafeta, he thinks that having pads is, having nice things as a young boy. But on the other side, girls, like the things that we go through where like some people in some cultures will ask us to like hide the pads, you know? How many people just walk proudly with a packet of pads just around, you know? People put them in paper bags, hide things. So it's really important that we ensure that we can uplift each other as well as come together when we're speaking about issues like this that are very normal and very natural. Just sort of break the stigma. So, thank you all for sharing this, and we'll find a way to be able to download this meeting chat and keep these stories because I want to be able to maybe put them together and share them with you so you also have them. Thank you for interacting. Oftentimes people get very shy. I'm glad that I'm not dealing with a shy crowd. Let's go to, okay, so we're talking about stories. But we want to use it as a story as a tool for advocacy, right? So I've already talked about your story can inform policy, it can inspire your peers, or it can inspire campaigns, it can break silence, it can push for better menstrual health access in schools. But like, how does this actually happen? You know, I often say that the small steps that we take create like ripple effects. And I know that sometimes we see these like grand like pieces of like communication that have like gone viral, whether it's like always pads during their commercials or whatever it is, it just seems very big. But oftentimes in our own communities, when we tell these stories, we can do it in a storytelling event in school. you know? This is the Youth Power Hub. I'm sure some of you are involved in like youth dialogue forums or have been able to contribute to maybe policy briefs, or you work for grassroots organization or volunteer for grassroots organizations. Whatever it is, your stories can be a tool in these spaces that you're in. It doesn't have to be this thing that's like separate and exists in its own vacuum. You can even, there are some people that pitch, you know, their stories to like community radio or people that write blogs or articles. And so it's always about thinking, you know, this is my story. These are my experiences. All of you have shared, or not all of you, but so many of you have shared your stories in the chat box. And all of these stories are great. All of these hopes and dreams are valid. And each one of them speaks to different types of stigmas that you've witnessed and experienced in your communities. And this provides an advocacy opportunity. Okay. Now, if we go to the next slide, let's try to do another Mentimeter. Let's see how easy this goes this time. Let me put in both the link and the code into, okay, so this is the code. And the link. Let's give you guys the link as well. Participation link. Okay, so it's in the chat, the link, the code. Let us see. So I would like you to tell me ways to share your stories. What are some of the ways that you can share your story? That is what I want us to pop in there. And let's see all of the different ways that we can come up with together. What are some of the ways that we can share the stories that we put together? I've placed the Mentimeter link in the chat as well as the access code. Let me know. Please let me know if you cannot access it. Okay, here we go. We have some. So blogs, develop a toolkit, e-magazines or magazines, newspaper, social media, oral storytelling. And let me also just say that as African people, we are, and I'm being incredibly biased, but I also think that it's very factual. I think that we're the greatest storytellers. But yes, oral storytelling, blogs, testimonies, through music, through word of mouth, youth forum events, vlogs, poetry. I love all of these. Okay. And I'll also make sure to download all of your responses and update the PowerPoint before it is shared with all of you. Now, these are some of the ones that you've shared. It's there are so many ways, and I mean, I couldn't even like put them all on this slide. I think that it's very easy to sometimes feel like to make your point needs a big sort of like flashy statement. But the most important thing for any advocate, any storyteller, is to have purpose and passion. And you should always choose a platform that suits you best, that is easily accessible, one that's not going to complicate your life, something that comes very naturally to you. When I was growing up, the earliest forms of storytelling that I used is writing. So either writing blogs, writing poetry, or photography. Today, I also work on podcasts and like documentaries and other things. So it can also change with time. But if you are serious about using storytelling and learning about it as it pertains to advocacy within MHM, start where you are, because the simple story that you're able to articulate can create ripple effects. And that's what we want. Oftentimes, advocacy and just social change in general isn't this thing that goes 180 or like changes overnight. It is little building blocks that people have used over time and built upon. And together, some change can maybe occur. And so stories don't only live online, they can live in classrooms, community halls. If you're someone of a certain religion, in your places of worship, they can be murals on the side of a building, they can be in your health center. There are some people that create incredible plays like drama, theater. And so I want you all to think about, what story do you have within you that could unlock policy, shift perceptions, or spark a movement? What is it that you've seen in your life, heard in your life, beliefs that you have that you think could create a very powerful story? And of course, if we're creating a powerful story, we need to know how to measure impact. Now, although storytelling is subjective and it's personal, and as I've said, all of your experiences are valid, because it can shift mindsets, because we're using it in advocacy, because we're using it in behavior change communication, and it can influence behavior and drive policy and all of these things, we need a way to sort of gauge what kind of impact we're having. And so the first two are less numbers based. The first one is personal reflection. Did someone think or feel something new? You might have a conversation with a friend. Someone might tell you something. Maybe sometimes you don't realize, by sharing your story, sometimes you give confidence to someone else and permission to someone else to be able to share their story. So those dots also, it's like a domino effect, and that's a personal reflection. You can't necessarily like measure that in numbers, but you can sort of reflect on the fact that, yes, there is some sort of impact that's happening. The second one is the catalytic outcomes. What sort of like change or shift has this inspired or made happen? Did it spark a campaign? Did it, help with fundraising efforts, or like, get more people to donate pads, money, other types of resources? Was there a policy shift? These are sort of the catalytic outcomes. And these are, I guess, the more like big ones that I spoke about. And this necessarily isn't something that I see every single day, but when it happens, it's a very wow moment and you can't miss it. So you know that it's caused an impact. The one in the middle is the audience engagement. Now, this, I think, as someone that works in communications, this is the one that we focus on the most. It's quantitative. You'll be able to measure something. If you've written a poem, for example, is that poem, are you being asked to like perform that in other places? Do people want to film it and like share it? Um, if you're someone on social media, like how much engagement does this piece sort of get you in terms of shares or mentions or views? So basically, the audience engagement is, did the story reach or move people? And how can you like quantify that in numbers? And so, although impact isn't always instant, and And you don't necessarily need a full research budget to be able to make this happen. I want us to remember that even informal feedback, those little like steps that we take in our everyday lives, those matter because they plant seeds. And at the beginning, we spoke about the behavior change communication, the 4 ingredients that go into it. We spoke about the storytelling frameworks. At that beginning of your story, you also need to take into account, what kind of impact do I want this to have? What would success look like to you when you share your story with the world? Do you want there to be like a policy shift? Like, do you want it to reach levels of government? Do you just want it to shift some mindsets of like your community where you are? Is it a school policy that you want to change? Or is it just like you want to have a simple conversation? Maybe even like within your family. Sometimes there are conversations that we haven't had that we want to have, and maybe this story is able to help us achieve that. So always think about, what does success look like to me? Okay. Now, as we're slowly wrapping up, the calls to action. I want to first tell you all that I have really been enjoying this so far, and I really thank you for engaging with me and sharing the stories that we've heard. Now I have a little bit of a challenge for you. Your story matters, okay? And I said that we're going to try and maybe collect it if we can download the chat and like share it around. But I also want you to post it if you're someone who's on social media. Post it on X, Instagram, Facebook, tag Youth Power Hub, #PeriodPower, and let's actually slowly build on this movement that exists to break period stigma across our continent. That's my first challenge to you all. The second one is, as you go into sort of maybe writing stories more, understand that it's a learning process. Nobody is ever at their best in the present moment. So be easy on yourselves. However, one thing that has helped me become a better storyteller is to ask myself, what story do I wish someone had told me growing up or at a specific age, right? Because oftentimes we can think that our experiences are just something that we're dealing with. But oftentimes there are so many other people that can benefit from hearing that someone else is experiencing it. It helps us feel seen, it helps us feel heard, it helps us feel like we belong. And those sorts of feelings are very important in creating any sort of movement or action. So always go back to, what story do I wish someone had told me? Or what do I wish that I had told someone? Different iterations of that will always help ground your storytelling. And then the last thing is, talk to someone in your life about periods this week or in the coming week, because we're at the end of the week. Talk to them about, maybe it's something that you learned from this class, maybe it's something that you've seen outside, maybe it's something that maybe you haven't been able to really share with people, but you're like, you know what? I'm going to try and break the stigma, and I'm not going to be silent about this anymore. Your story and your voice matter. And so, yes, one voice, one story, that is how change has always begun. We look through very historical events in history, all social movements, and the same should be happening for menstrual health management. And you all are very capable and very inspiring individuals, and I admire the work that you're all doing and you're committed to, and the work that Youth Power Hub are doing. There's probably going to be a follow-up email from Sharon and the team with maybe resources in this presentation. Like I said in the beginning, my name is Qali. You can find me at Qali on LinkedIn and on social media. I'm not on X, but I'm on Instagram and TikTok and that's my handle on the screen. And the podcast that I host for UNICEF is called The ABCs of SBC. We look at how social and behavior change can be used to solve some of the world's biggest issues. My personal podcast is called The Connect, and I would love to continue this conversation I also want to remind us that English is not everyone's first language. It's definitely not mine. And so when you're telling stories, when you're advocating, of course, do it in the way that's most comfortable and makes most sense for you. The world is not just English speakers, okay? I know that there are some non-English speakers on here today, and I thank you all for your time, and you are all the storytellers that your community is waiting for, and this is just the beginning. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Qali. A big round of applause if you can just send in a reaction. Thank you, Qali, for such an engaging and practical session. I'm sure everyone has taken away a lot on how to transform our personal experiences into powerful advocacy, especially when it comes to menstrual health, hygiene and management. I'd like to open the floor for maybe a few reflections and questions, but I can see a lot of that has been shared on chat. But if you can, maybe in under 30 seconds, if you have something to say, kindly please just raise your hand so I can pick you real quick before we close off the masterclass. Anyone? Can see the thank yous. I've also shared Qali's LinkedIn. If you'd like to connect with her, please don't go spamming her LinkedIn if you have nothing important to say. But please, I can see so many thank yous in the session. Thank you so much. No hand up as of now. So maybe as we wrap up, I thank you all for engaging, attending this masterclass. I know it's Friday, and also for sharing your thoughts. Just remember that every story matters, as Qali has mentioned. So please post your stories online, tag us, use the hashtag #PeriodPower, tag us at the Youth Power Hub on X, Instagram, Facebook, and just join an African movement breaking period stigma. So this masterclass is a bigger journey for the Youth Power Hub. We'll have more opportunities to learn, share, advocate together. So stay tuned. We'll be sharing more information on that. And on behalf of YACT, my team is here, Lillian, AfriYAN ESA. I have several of my team here. I see Lakmo, I see Angel B, I see Angel U, I see Puvi. We have UNFPA ESARO, UNESCO. We would like to thank you all for joining us today. Your voices and stories are so powerful. Let's keep using them to drive change across Africa. From me and my team, we say goodbye and have a lovely weekend. Have a nice one, y'all. Thank you.
Too much.